Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming to my chat with Marissa Stapley. I am so excited. I've been excited for like all day, anxious and excited to talk and see Marissa's face. I haven't seen it in so long, and all of your faces. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement, and then I'm going to introduce Marissa, and she's going to share some books that she's reading right now. And then we're going to do her biography, and she's going to share a reading from Lucky. For thousands of years, Tikaranto has been the traditional land of the Wendat Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. Tikaranto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. It is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on their territory. I realize with Zoom, some of you may not, in fact, be in Toronto, so I welcome you to give your own personal acknowledgement of where you happen to be right now. I'm coughing. It's like COVID. Marissa, welcome to Junction Reads. I'm so excited. I really wish that we were in person so that I could hug you and cough on you and not just here in my own private space.
Thank you, Allie. I'm so happy to be here, and I miss the in-person gatherings, but I know they will be back. So
Yeah. So for everyone to add to their reading list, would you please share with us what you're reading right now?
absolutely. So I am currently reading, I always have a big pile of books, so I had to cut it short. I just started reading Leaving Isn't the Hardest Part by Lauren Hoff, partly because of the little brouhaha where on Twitter the other day or earlier this week. And I don't know if there are any other authors here, but I think it's very difficult to stay away from reading your reviews.
Mhm.
And it's very difficult not to want to just go on Twitter and basically what happened. She went on Twitter and kind of
Yeah.
started taking people to task and probably said more than she should have. But I think there was a small part of all authors who thought, God, it would be so amazing to just have no F's left to give and just say what you want. And what happened in the Goodreads book reviewer community is a lot of them went on and started one-starring this book. And I found that mildly appalling because I think regardless of how you feel about an author and their behavior, that should never happen. Not only that, but this is a woman who was raised in a cult as a queer person, taught that her identity was that basically what she was akin to being a murderer, had her identity taken away. And I just don't understand why you would ever I mean, why would you treat anybody like that? But anyway, point being, I bought the book, I 5-starred it on Goodreads, and these essays are brilliant. They are like just every single one of them is just so compelling, and it really is a 5-star book. So I can see why she was like, 4 stars not good enough, give me 5 stars. So I would recommend this one. Great essay collection. The other day, I don't know if Cary Clare has ever done Junction Reads.
No.
Cary, so she's a Toronto author and she has impeccable taste in books. She writes reviews for the 49th Shelf and she does CBC book recommendations on maybe on Metro Morning or CBC Ontario. And I always turn to her when I'm looking for a book. So she said to me this week, Catherine Heine's Standard Deviation is brilliant. I happen to have an advance copy that someone had sent me years ago on my shelf. So I read it in 2 days. It was hilarious, delightful, a portrait of a marriage and a divorce and a family. And it was one of those ones that you were laughing and everyone was like, what are you laughing about? And I would read passages aloud to my family. So I immediately ordered her new one, which came out last Tuesday, Early Morning Riser, from one of my favorite bookstores, Blue Heron. And then my dad went and got it, which gave him something to do, which is important for the seniors in our lives. And I started it last night and it's hilarious and brilliant, just like the last one I read. And my publicist at Simon & Schuster, Jillian, who you know, is also an extremely discerning reader. So she recommended this short story collection, Open Water. And I read one story the day that I got it, and I had to put it aside because I have so many others, but it's so breathtakingly brilliant. And I feel so lucky that I have really nowhere to go and nothing to do except read
Except
these
read.
books on my list. So that's what I'm reading right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
I need to get more short stories. I've been spending all of my time well, I go to bookstore websites all the time, and I look for new stuff, but I need more short stories, I think. So that's a good one to start with.
This is a good one. Zadie Smith's Grand
Yeah.
Union. I'm reading that one as well, and that it's great too. And I like that they're some of them are pretty short. So if you're tired at night, I can't go to sleep without reading. But sometimes I can't fall asleep without having finished the short story I started. So they're a good length for bedtime reading. Those
Yeah.
ones.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So before we get a reading of Lucky, which it was such a fantastic read. It was a quick read. I was immediately brought into her world and I didn't want to leave it. It was one of those books that I had to finish in 2 days uh,
Mhm.
because I didn't want to not finish it. So I'm excited to hear whatever chapter you're going to share with us. But before we do that, can I share your biography?
Yes. As long as you don't say anything embarrassing that you know about me.
Marissa Stapley is the internationally best-selling author of 4 novels: Mating for Life, Things to Do When It's Raining, and The Last Resort, which was shortlisted for the Arthur Ellis Best Novel Award, was an Oprah Mag and New York Post favorite, and was optioned for television. Her latest novel, Lucky, was also recently optioned for television by ABC Disney Studios, which I'm excited to talk to you about. Marissa is also the author of holiday rom-coms under the pen name Maggie Knox. The Holiday Swap will be released in the fall by Putnam Penguin Canada Hodder Books. Know how to put that in order. Marissa has taught creative writing and editing at the University of Toronto and Centennial College and founded the online writing school, The Starter, in 2020. Her journalism has appeared in newspapers and magazines across North America, including the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, Elle, and Reader's Digest. Marissa, I'm excited. Will you read
Thank
something for
you,
us?
Allison. Of course, I have to put on my reading glasses. It's finally time to admit that I can't read without reading glasses. Um, so Lucky, as many know, is a tough, talented grifter with a heart of gold and a winning lottery ticket in her back pocket. She can't cash because she happens to be wanted by the police or by the FBI and the police. Lucky is not someone who is a con artist necessarily by choice, or that's not how she became a con artist. She's very good at it, and there's a part of her that really loves it. Kind of like when you're watching, if you watch The Queen's Gambit, and she's so good at chess. It's kind of like that. She's got that razor sharp memory, and she can read people, and so there is a high that she gets from doing it. But she did not necessarily come by it honestly, and you you learn about Lucky in the present, but I weave chapters from the past. And I started writing Lucky and didn't have those past chapters at first. And I kept thinking, I want people to love her. I know she's a criminal, but I need people to love her. And then I was reading something about like extending compassion to your inner child or something like that. And I thought, oh, people will be able to feel for Lucky if they learn who she is as a child. And so I wrote the first chapter of her starting around, I think she was 10, and that just changed everything about the book. So I am going to read a chapter from Lucky's past timeline so that you can fall in love with her too. Lucky was raised by a con artist who picked her up off the steps of a church in the opening pages of the book, and didn't tell her that, told her that he was her dad. So she believes that. And they crisscross the US. And when I was writing that, I always had a map of the US open, trying to figure out where they were going. They're always going somewhere. They're always heading towards Canada, and they can never quite get there. And Lucky dreams that if they can end up in Canada, maybe they won't be con artists anymore. Maybe they'll be something better. And this chapter I'm going to share is when Lucky gets to go on her first vacation because she's been working so hard as a con artist. Her dad finally decides she needs a break. So this is September 1992, the Adirondacks, New York. Lucky worked with her father, and this meant she'd been traveling around the country for as long as she could remember. She was only 10, going on 30, her dad would say. She'd seen a lot of the world. She knew things. For example, Lucky already knew that money didn't just come to you. You had to chase it, which was often exhausting. Some people have to hustle harder than others, her father would say. You come by your name honestly, though. You're luckier than most when it comes to money, but you still have to hone that luck. Make sure it never leaves your side. That's going to be a hard job. For the first time, they were going to have an honest to goodness vacation, though. They'd recently had a run of good luck, and her father was feeling flush. He was taking her to a fancy hotel in the Adirondacks. No work for a whole week, he said. Just reading, relaxing, swimming, doing whatever you want. Lucky pressed her face to the car window, then touched the gold crucifix she always wore around her neck. It had been hers since she was a baby, a gift from her long-lost mother, one of the few possessions she carried with her when they traveled, the only thing she had that was really hers. Lucky was in the back seat, surrounded by books that had been borrowed from the library in the town before last. Borrowed. Stealing library books made Lucky feel guiltier than almost anything else, but her dad would say it was the government that paid for those books and that the government owed them. Besides, they needed the books because she was homeschooled. Road school, he often called it. They sped past a sign that said, "Welcome to New York, the Empire State." "Hey, isn't this where I was born? Around here somewhere?" "You were born in New York City," her father said, "not out here in the mountains." "But isn't this where my mother is from, though? Around here somewhere? Didn't you say that? That Gloria Devereaux was from here?" "Did I?" Lucky put aside the book she had been reading, The Elegant Universe. She didn't know that other 10-year-olds were reading goosebump stories, not books about string theory. She didn't know any other 10-year-olds. "Yes, you did. You came home one night from a poker game and I asked you where Gloria was from and you said Adirondacks. You shouldn't ask me questions when I've been drinking too much, which I probably was after that poker game. Say, what's in that book you're reading?" "Tell me a story about my mother," Lucky pressed. "Tell me about Gloria. I need to focus on the road." This was a lie. Her father could drive on a freeway blindfolded. "Come on," Lucky said. "Just tell me one tiny thing." "I came home one night from buying you formula and poof, she was gone," was all her father had ever said about her mother's departure. He made it sound final, like Lucky's mother had completely disappeared. But she had to exist somewhere out there, didn't she? When Lucky got like this, when she prodded for more information, her father's reaction was almost never good. Sometimes he got mad and told her to stop poking at old wounds. Sometimes he said it was cruel of her to bring up things that made him feel so sad. But every once in a while, he'd relent and throw her a crumb. Why was this necklace so special to her? Why did she leave it behind for me to have? If she didn't want anything to do with me, why did she leave anything behind for me at all? Lucky thought he might not answer, but then, "She attended St. Monica's parish," her father allowed. "That necklace was a gift from a nun who lived there." "Parish?" Lucky repeated. "Yeah, like a church." Lucky had never been inside a church. "What happens?" she asked. "At church." More silence, then, "There's a lot of talk about what it means to be a good person, about what God might do to you if you're bad, where he might send you, about hell." "Oh." Lucky frowned. She'd heard of hell, but hadn't given the idea much thought. People sometimes told her father to go to hell. She touched the necklace and gazed out the window again at the velvety looking Adirondack Mountains coming into focus. As little as she knew about religion, about what made you good and what made you bad, she worried that she and her father were definitely bad. They lied, they stole, they snuck around. She had read enough books about heroes and villains to know which side they were on. There were a dozen more questions she wanted to ask her father now, but perhaps she didn't really want the answers. She picked up her book again as her father turned the car radio to the Yankees game. "Another hour or so, kiddo. Sit back and relax. We're going to have a great week." Eventually, they approached the elegant hotel, which sat on an island attached to the mainland by a short bridge. The island was surrounded by the glittery water of Lake George. "Nixon stayed here," her father said as they approached the Sagamore. This prompted a short lecture studded with facts. "Nixon actually did some good things," he concluded as he pulled the car around a circular driveway and landed it in front of a stately white building. "But it got lost in all the bad. That's what usually happens." Lucky admired the turrets and balconies and stained glass windows of the hotel, then turned her focused attention on the people milling about. "Between this and all your book reading, that's school done for the day, kiddo." Lucky barely heard him. It was a long shot, she knew, but she was still looking for her mother, searching the faces of the guests and staff. She had another clue now. Her mother had gone to church. She'd had a friend who was a nun. A valet approached. She unrolled the window and stuck her head out. The air was fresh. This was going to be a perfect week. Lucky could feel it. Upstairs, inside their hotel room, which had a large window with a view of the mountains, lake, and resort grounds, Lucky's father put down his battered suitcase, which was covered in stickers from all the places they'd been. He flopped down onto the bed closest to the window without taking off his shiny shoes, put his hands behind his head, sighed happily, and closed his eyes. Lucky put her smaller suitcase on the second bed, unzipped it, and began to unpack. She lifted out a yellow bathing suit and glanced at him. Can I go to the pool? You're on vacation, Lucky. You can do whatever the hell you want to. What if kids my age aren't allowed at the pool by themselves? Her father's eyes were closed. Then just lie about your age, he said. Outside, Lucky wandered the hotel grounds for a while. She bypassed the crowded pool and walked down to the edge of the lake. But when she stepped in to swim, a lifeguard blew his whistle at her and shouted, "You can't swim there." Lucky turned and squinted. Why not? The lifeguard pointed down the beach to a small area marked out by boys. That's the swimming area. Lucky walked toward the swimming area. It was crowded. She stood by the water for a moment, surveying the writhing mass of bodies, the shouting adults and shrieking children. Then she turned and headed back toward the pool. There, she sat at the edge with her legs dangling in the water in the quietest corner she could find, which wasn't very quiet at all, and surveyed the children swimming, splashing, spitting, dunking. She watched one young boy swim to the edge and clutch the concrete, closing his eyes, rapt. A yellowish cloud bloomed in the water below him, and she looked away, repulsed. Then someone sat down beside her. It was a girl about her age with chestnut brown hair that was as smooth and shiny as Lucky's was coarse and corkscrew wild. The girl slid her legs into the water, too, and Lucky looked down at her feet. The girl had a toe ring, and it glinted in the sun. Isn't it ridiculous? She said. Lucky was startled. Yes, she managed to reply, wanting to agree with whatever it was this girl said. I mean, there's this whole beautiful lake, and they expect us to swim in there. She pointed toward the beach and the tiny swimming area, then turned back to Lucky in the pool. Or in here? No, thank you. Lucky tried to size the girl up, but she wasn't used to sizing kids up. She got the sense that what you saw was what you got. Yeah, she said. No, thank you. That kid over there, I think he just peed. The girl hooted with laughter and pulled her legs out of the water. Ew! Lucky pulled her legs out too and hugged them against herself. You want to go for a walk? The girl said. Around the corner, the lifeguard can't see us and you can go for a proper swim. She stood and Lucky scrambled to her feet too. I'm Steph, by the way. Lucky loved that name. It was on her list of favorites. I'm Andrea, she said, which was the alias she and her father had agreed upon for this trip. Most people call me Andy. She'd made this part up on the spot and was glad because she made Steph smile. Andy, I like that, she said. Come on, let's go. Steph and Andy stayed out until the sun started to set over the water and the mountains went from gray-green to purple-blue. My mom will be worried, Steph said eventually. I should get back. Yeah, my dad will be worried too, Lucky said, even though that likely wasn't true. It's just you and your dad? Lucky nodded. It's just me and my mom, Steph said. She started to stand, but she flopped back down on the sand, and Lucky waited to see what she would do next. The sky above them was turning a heavy blue now. My dad died, Steph said. I'm sorry. Thanks, I miss him. How did he die? Heart attack. He was really healthy, but I guess he had stress from work or something. My mom always says if he hadn't worked so hard, he'd still be here. She cries about all the money we have. She gives it away to charity, says she wishes we were poor and that he were still alive. Sometimes I forget he's dead and I look for him. Sorry, you probably don't get it. I do get it, Lucky said. And then she added her lie like a matching earring. My mom died too. The made-up story flowed easily from her lips. She didn't even feel guilty for it because she wanted this so badly. When she was done talking, Steph reached for her hand and squeezed. The sun was almost down now. In the sky, a star flickered on, then held. Lucky squeezed Steph's hand back. A tear slid down her cheek. She wasn't crying because she was sad, and she wasn't crying for her mother. For once, she was crying because she was happy. She'd made a friend. All right, so let me get this straight, her father said the next night. I'm still Virgil, but you're Andy for short. We're from Lansing, drove here for an end of summer treat, came up through Toronto for fun, went to the top of the CN Tower. Your mother died last year, a rare blood disorder. It's brilliant, really, Lucky, it's brilliant. wasn't trying to be brilliant. I was just telling you in case you talk to her. I didn't want you to mess up my story. I was chatting with her mother earlier. Name's Darla. I arranged that the four of us are going to have dinner. Guess we're not on vacation anymore, kiddo. We've got a job now. These people are loaded. Darla was wearing a tennis bracelet at the pool, for God's sake. Still wearing her ring, but thanks to you, I know she's a widow. Anyway, we're meeting them in half an hour, and we have a little more of our story to get straight. We're going to tell them that you're sick too, with the same hereditary blood disorder that killed your mother. We're going to tell them I can't afford the treatments and that coming here was a wish you had, and I wanted to grant it because, well, I just don't know how long you'll live. Dad, please, do we have to? Isn't the one lie enough? He was fixing his tie in the mirror, but now he turned to her, perplexed. But we're only here for the week. Then we'll move on, as we always do, and you'll never see her again. She's not your friend. This is our job. Remember, we might be flesh now, but our luck is always changing, and money doesn't last forever. I spent a hell of a lot of it on this week, too. Lucky hung her head. You said we were on vacation. You said that's all it was. Her father sighed and sat down beside her on her bed. When an opportunity presents itself, you have to take it, kiddo, or someone else will. I thought I taught you that. You can't let your guard down, ever. Not even when you're having fun, especially when you're having fun. Now, come on, get moving. Fix your hair and dry your face. We're due downstairs. The next morning, Lucky sat at the edge of the pool and dipped her toes in. The concrete scraped at her thighs. Steph plopped down beside her, and Lucky turned to look at her, trying to memorize her so she'd never forget this. Steph's hair cascaded down her shoulders. She had freckles on her nose, a crooked grin, but she wasn't smiling now. It's school next week, Steph said, glum, as she put her feet in the water beside Lucky's. Summer's almost over. I can't believe it. Lucky searched for a response, but then Steph realized something and frowned. Sorry, you don't get to go to school. You're homeschooled because you're. In that moment, Lucky really felt it. She felt sick. She felt ill at the idea of pretending to be sick to this person she was supposed to see as a mark, but who she wanted to actually be able to call a friend, a real one. She felt sick all through her body, like she really did have the same rare blood disorder that she had lied and said had killed the mother she had never actually met. I'm not sick, Lucky said. The words burned out of her throat. Was she really about to betray her father, to go against his story? They'd have to leave the hotel right away. She'd never see Steph again, but still, soon she was never going to see her again anyway. And worse, her supposed friend was going to remember Lucky, remember this for the rest of her life. My dad just says that, Lucky continued, staring up directly at the sun, willing it to burn her eyes blind. I'm not sick. I'm fine, perfectly healthy. Nothing is wrong with me. Steph turned. She reached forward and put her hand on top of Lucky's. Really? She asked. Really, Lucky answered. Steph paused for a moment, considering. Then she said, It's okay. It's not, Lucky said, and now she was crying. It's not okay. I get it. You want to pretend you're fine so that you will be fine. I heard my mom on the phone with the bank. It's supposed to be a surprise, but she's going to give your dad the money he needs for those procedures. You're going to get better. Isn't that great? Lucky was seeing black spots now. Your mom shouldn't do that. Oh, Andy, it's okay. We have lots of money. You'll be able to go to school now. Maybe. Lucky felt tears streaming down her cheeks to her jawbone, plop, plop onto her collarbones. Maybe you'll move closer to me. Maybe you'll move to Bellevue and we'll live near each other. I know my mom would like that. She really wants to see your dad again. Then we'll go to the same school and it will be just perfect. And maybe, she was grasping Lucky's arm now, our parents will get married and we'll be sisters. Come on, imagine it. Lucky looked away from the sun, blinked over and over until the world came back into focus, stared into the pool water at their toes beneath it, side by side. Steph had given her a toe ring too. Their matching rings glinted in the waves. Sister feet. I guess you never know, Lucky said, lifting her hand away from Steph's to rub at her cheeks until they were dry. But Steph reached up and grabbed her hand again. I know, she said. I know you're going to be fine. One day it's going to be as if this disease you have just disappeared. Yes, one day, Lucky said, that's exactly what it's going to be like. That's all for Lucky for today.
Thank you so much. Those are my favorite scenes. I'm glad that you introduced them the way that you did and felt uh, the importance of them. This scene, this relationship that she has with Steph, and her desire to have this best friend, to have this sister, was so heartbreaking for me because when I opened the book, I really did think, and we have talked about it, and outside of this talked about how to make this character lovable. And this scene really cinched it for me because how can you not love a person who wants to be loved as much as Lucky does? So my question for you, in as a writer, in sitting down and rendering characters and thinking about them and drawing them out, I want you to talk about how you do that, how you develop your characters, but also specifically what makes a character likable or lovable in your mind, like as a writer and maybe even as a reader.
Well, I think that's a really interesting question for this book because I've spent a lot of time thinking about likability of characters and talking especially with my female author friends about the idea that I mean, back to the whole thing about Goodreads, you'll often get raked over the coals on Goodreads if you've created an unlikable female character, which really rankles. But in this case, so I mean, for example, in other books like The Last Resort, I didn't necessarily need everyone to be likable, but I really did want Lucky to be loved by the people who read her because, as you can see, she really wanted to be loved, and that's who she is. And I didn't want this to be just a thriller. I didn't want it to be a thriller at all. So I didn't want that sort of unreliable, unlikable, oh well, she's so bad, but we love to watch her be bad and we love to watch her win. It was really important to me to create some moral complexity and to create this character we loved. And I wanted people to want her to win. Because the lottery ticket, kind of the MacGuffin of the book, right? I wanted people to want her to win that.
Mhm.
So that's why I created her the way she was. And that's why I created her to be wanting to be loved. But what was the second part of your question? I've
Oh,
totally lost my
and
train of thought.
I
Yeah.
think the funny thing is it's not even just Lucky, right?
Mhm.
Like John and Cary and everyone that comes into the book. There's a likability to all of them, despite their, I mean, except Priscilla maybe could be the exception, but there's a likability to all of them, right? In
Mhm.
their complexity or just as a reader wanting to understand why they're driven to live their lives the way that they're being lived, choosing
Yeah.
to live.
And I think all that's so important as an author to, no matter who you're creating, if you're creating a hero or a villain, to fully explore their past. And if they're really good, why are they so good? And if they're really bad, why are they bad? Why are they making these decisions? And I think until you do that, you don't have a real character. So going back to The Last Resort again, I struggled with doing that for Miles. And Miles was this villain with like tie you to the tracks with him twirling his mustache until I went back in his history and realized what had happened to him, and then I felt for him. So I think you have to, as you're creating characters, you have to feel something for them. It really was very easy for me to feel for Lucky right away. She came to me just quite fully formed. I can kind of picture the moment. It's funny. It's like it does feel a bit like one of those magical moments in storytelling where it just was like, here I am and here's my story.
Yeah.
But I still needed to figure her out. And then it was tough because she didn't really want to be figured out. So I had to go back into her childhood. Like Lucky in the present is still quite enigmatic, right? And even now, I don't know if I fully know her as an adult as well as I totally do know and understand her as a child,
Yeah.
because and she wants it that way. But I think, with all, when I'm creating a character, I eventually do end up doing a Proust questionnaire or something like that, like just trying to dig deep and figure out who they are. And I also know if I can't do the questionnaire, then I just have to keep kind of grinding through. I usually write like a really short, messy first draft slash outline, and um, I don't do anything that's how I figure out if I have a book too, right? I don't mind doing that. I could get 20,000 words in and say, well, this has great characters and no plot, so
Right.
better move on. But sometimes I return back to those. But I think you just have to feel your way around in the dark a little bit with characters too, until you can get to a point where you could answer a questionnaire. You know their motto, you know their biggest fear, you know what they love, you know what they hate,
Yeah.
and it's important.
Yeah, because I certainly want Lucky because of Lucky the Kid to win the $390 million. I
Yeah.
don't know if I would want Lucky to win that money without the depth that is shared in the book. So that's good
Yeah.
for so I think you've kind of touched on this, but when you sit down to write a book, and I think you've essentially answered this, but is it always that you're sparked by a character, or are any of your books sparked by an idea, like sparked by an experience or a place or anything?
Mhm. So it used to be that I would be sparked by a character. And I have learned, unfortunately, it's in the world of commercial fiction in particular, you really have to focus more on plot if you're going to have a book, right? So that will be a page turner, will be classic, that will satisfy your publisher and your editor. So I have so many characters where I'm like, that would make a great character, and I could just like be with her, and we could just do nothing together, and it would be beautiful. But now I can't fall into that trap, and it's partly also because I do have deadlines, and I have to get the book eventually written. So now it's really situations
Yeah.
um and places and ideas. So the idea for Lucky came to me when I heard a radio report about an unclaimed lottery ticket, and they were on the radio speculating about why. And I'd never heard this theory before. The announcer said sometimes people don't come forward when there's a warrant out for their arrest because they can't stay anonymous. And I was like, well, that's a story. Like, that's a really good story. And
Mhm.
then it was a little while before Lucky did show up, because I was like, but also I don't really want to write a book about a criminal. I'm not in the mood. Like, I want something fun and feel good, and things were hard. And then Lucky showed up and was like, I'm not really a criminal. Like, I know I am, but listen, let me explain myself. And then when I had her, I had I had the book, but I'm always on the lookout now more for situations and sort of a what if such and such happens, and then sometimes I'll take characters I've thought of and try to put them in that. It never really works. Like, I kind of have this graveyard of cool
Character
characters with no
created.
story. So
There's a teacher in this book who's just incredible. Just for anybody who hasn't read it, you'll come across her and you'll just be like, "Oh, I wish I could have pages and pages of that teacher."
yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's cool that you thought that. I like that. Oh, that's neat.
You have a knack, and with all of your writing, you have a knack of I don't know if it's foreshadowing so much as, oh, it's word choice, I guess. Like the way that you introduce doubt or uh, question, conflict with just a few words is really well done. Like going back, you're like, oh, I had a feeling that this is how it was going to go, and I wonder how I had that feeling. And then when I go back, and again, this is probably just a reader slash writer perspective, and not just a reader's perspective, but and I'm asking this question as a writer, do you think about that when you're actually writing it out, when you're constructing the sentences and the paragraphs and everything? Are there not just, plotted points in the novel, but are there actually word choices and sentence
Mhm.
construction that you think will develop the tension or amplify the conflict?
Absolutely. And I think I'm more free to do that because of the way that I will blindly write that first draft that doesn't have to be complete. It can have entire chapters that just say, I don't know how she's going to get from here to here, but she will. I'll figure it out. So then I have something to work with. And then that means that, yes, I can go in. I try to outline it before I start my second draft, and then I am looking for places to add foreshadowing and to say, okay, I really want this feeling here, like that line in the chapter about adding her line, like a matching earring, like those moments, I can layer those in once I've got established where she's going. And I think it's a good way to do it because I love layering in red herrings, and I love being able to be the puppeteer trying to get the reader to feel something or see something coming but not really be sure what they see coming. And I also think having a great editor to work with who I mentioned deadlines, but I'm not on like a book a year deadline. I don't have to crank a book out in 5 months or something
Yeah.
crazy like that. So I still have the luxury of time, and nobody is asking me to just put something out even though it's not ready because I release a book every April or something. You know what I mean? So, and you have to give your books the time and space. And sometimes, like, I might get frustrated if I send my book to my editor and then she takes a little extra time to get back with that round of edits. But it's always with that time that I open it up again and I'm like, oh, here I can see where I can layer this in and I can see this scene much more clearly. Or actually, this is really obvious and I need to pull back here.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
really a fine balance, as you know, as a writer, though, between giving yourself time and layering things in, and also working on a book so much and feeling that you've read it so many times that you can't see it anymore. And it's hard, right? That's a tough thing. And that's again where editors come in because they can see it for you.
Right. That's I guess the question that I really had was that kind of not necessarily innate writer skill, but that kind of innate connection with the book
Mhm,
and knowing what you want the book to do and how you want a reader to feel when they're reading it.
mhm. And I think about the sentences too. I mean, with writing, like writing just starts to come naturally. Like the more you do it, as you know, like it's as natural sometimes as breathing. So I don't think about it as much. Like Lucky was just one of like it's not going to happen like this again, but it was a pretty easy book for me to get through, and I knew what I had to do, and I know the next book isn't going to be like that. I know that for many different reasons because of what I've chosen to do, but because I chose to go back to the one that I didn't want to write because it was too hard, and I chose Lucky because she was easy and I was sad. So now I'm
Right.
going to go to the hard book, and it'll be a slog. But some books, really, Lucky did feel like magic while I was writing it. I can hardly remember doing it. Like I loved it. It felt so good.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
awesome. That's awesome. You talked about the structure, the back and forth,
Mhm.
and I know there's like all this, flashbacks, what they contribute to a work of fiction and what they detract from the work of fiction. But I loved it. I felt those past scenes were essential, and not just for the reader myself to fall in love with Lucky, but in the movement and flow of the plot, I thought they were essential. And we've talked about this, and you answered elsewhere in another interview slash conversation you've had, that this structure, that you thought about a TV show, that this story, Lucky Story, was in your mind a TV show before you even sat down to write it. And as it turns out, this structure actually plays well for a TV show. Like it feels natural as I'm reading it to see it and not just follow it along. So, do you think that this structure adds to the story in general, or do you think this structure works well as a more sort of visual story?
So, funnily enough, when I was trying, so I actually wrote a pilot for Lucky, like a bad pilot that nobody wait before I even started the book. So and it's like I think though it makes the setup for the book work quite well because that
Mhm.
scene at the beginning, she's in the casino and all that, you can really see that. But in my mind, because I had never worked in TV, so I didn't think about the dual timeline. Like I just wanted it to be simple. I wanted it to be as simple as possible. So when the past timeline was tugging at my arm, I was like, oh, for heaven's sake, like I just want it to be simple. I want it to be straightforward. I want you to be able to see it on a TV screen. And so I thought that the past timeline might be a detractor, and it turns out you're right, absolutely not. And some of the shows that were in the TV development, comparing it to like Lupin, like that past timeline is so seamless. And the Queen's Gambit, somewhat like there's not as much of the past in there. They sort of start and tell it in a more linear way, but you do go back. But I think that what you have to do, and what I think I've done with Lucky, is every moment that you visit in the past is always reverberating off what's happening. And you have to be so careful with that. And of course, it's the only way that it works in TV, that you see something and then you learn something about it by going back. And working on the development, the dual timeline is a huge draw, and they love it. And I think that's what they were really drawn to. So because it's a good way, right? Like you can't do information dumps on TV. You just have to.
Yeah, and there's so many that honestly, and you mentioned the casino, but there are so many scenes that are filled with tension visually
Mm,
that like the introductory pages there and we you didn't share those with us because they were too short, but those
mm.
introductory pages, in reading it out loud is 3 minutes, but that those introductory 3 pages I can see as an entire episode, right? Because just a baby on church steps is that's easily 15 minutes, right? Of like, oh my God, what's gonna happen to this baby?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I'm so excited about the TV show and I want to talk about it. I want to talk about how you've been writing the script, how you've been attending to that and how it's changed maybe or uh I don't know, enlightened your experience with Lucky and your experience of writing her story. Have you I also thought, have you tweaked things? Like, is there another character or two or three or four coming in to the script?
For sure. So I haven't started the script. I just finished the pitch. I wrote 11 versions of it for Carlton Cuse, who is a genius and a perfectionist. And he would say, don't worry, this is how it goes with every writer. I'm sure he was just being nice. I can't imagine, I don't know, but anyway,
Right.
the way it went was, at the beginning he was like, I really liked Lucky, I think it was great, throw away the book though, make it totally different. So I was like, no problem. I threw away the book and I created all these, I kind of went crazy, and we tried to work with that version of the pitch for a while, and then one day he was like, okay, I think it needs to be more like the book. And I was like, no,
Right.
that's fine. I can do that. Like, it's my book, no problem. And then I cried, not on the Zoom call, thank God. And I, I went back to the book and I saw that it was all there, which made me feel like, okay, I really did want it to be a TV show. It was all there.
Yeah.
So then I did 6 different drafts of the pitch closer to the book. And then by the end of it, we've now made one character more important, a few characters less important. I fought really hard for some characters and then finally just gave up because it was too complicated. Like, it's really about just simplifying it, mostly for the pitch. And
Right.
then I think, God willing, and the pitch goes forward, because it has been optioned by ABC and we do have a producer, but we don't actually have anywhere for it to air yet. Like, that's where we're developing it. So if it goes forward, then I'll be writing the script, and then I think I can get more complicated again. But it's
Right.
been about writing 10 pages where I sit down in a room or in a Zoom call and I sell it. And it has to be, it's been a huge learning experience for me as a writer,
Mhm.
to be, for, economy of language, and for how to get your point across, really in a really concise way, and how to simplify. But I know that it hasn't taught me anything about novel writing. And what it has done actually is made me appreciate not being constrained that way, like not having to worry about confusing a bunch of people in the middle of a pandemic sitting on a Zoom call who really only have like the mental capacity for 15 minutes. Like, that's
Right.
kind of like hell, actually. It's like being in hell sometimes. And like, I'm so grateful to be doing it, but it is so spectacularly challenging.
Yeah. I can
But
imagine.
what it has done is made me feel really close to Lucky all the time. Like, she is my whole world. And I normally, when you release a book as an author, you're like, well, I'm releasing her into the world, and how will she do? And I'm like, like, this one's not leaving the nest, right? Like, she's
Right.
she's staying. So
Yeah.
that's different, and it's kind of neat. And I don't mind, because I do like her. I love her.
Yeah.
And I think she might be my favorite character I've created. So it's a good thing I'm stuck with her
Yeah.
for a
There
good.
I mean, I love her too. What I love about thinking about, and again, uh, this is personal, thinking about the TV show and knowing the TV show or the pitch exists, reading the novel, there's characters in this book, and I hope everyone's read it or are going to read it soon. There are characters in this book that I'm looking forward to seeing developed, right? Like there are histories and past lives that I hope we get to see. And I don't want to talk about those two.
No, for sure. I will tell you, Carlton is obsessed, mildly obsessed with Cary. Like, really, I know. And at first I was like, really? And now and John, he really likes John for future,
Yeah.
but was like pushing and pushing and pushing. And he'd call it the Cary of it all. You've got to sell me on the Cary of it all. And I'm like, never, Cary leaves. Like, nothing. He's not a thing. So, and now Cary is quite different for the show. And sometimes maybe I do wish that I had thought of that for the book, but I don't really see how I could have, because I don't, I mean, I don't see how. Like, it was literally rewriting the same 10 pages over and over again
Yeah.
until
And it
uh,
would have ended up as like a 500-page epic novel if we'd gotten everybody's.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's so that I like that. So I think that's pretty cool. And this, there are more characters that everyone will learn more about, I hope. So keep you
Yeah.
posted on that. Mhm.
I just have one more question about what you're working on, but I wanted to throw it out to anybody out there. If you have any questions for Marissa, feel free to either put it in the chat or uh, privately chat Kaylee, and she can ask them on your behalf. But my question is, do you have time to work on anything else, or are you, as you say, so obsessed and entrenched and lucky in her life that you can't think of this challenging novel ahead?
Yeah, a little bit. That has been the case, and I think if we weren't in the situation we were in with the pandemic, that would probably be different, because I can't even believe I've done what I've done, getting the pitch done. And also I have Karma and I, with our, because I'm writing the rom-coms as Maggie Knox, and it's a pseudonym because I'm writing with another author. So we finished that book, and then we actually ended up selling two, so we're writing another holiday rom-com together. And that's about it. Like, between, and I'm writing a pilot for The Last Resort with a Canadian TV writer.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that when.
Yeah, I've been busy, and I haven't been working on a new novel yet. And normally I would be well into a new novel, and I don't mind that I'm not, because I find it's really hard to be try out there doing readings and interviews about one novel when you're like, I've moved on. It's kind of like doing interviews about like your ex-boyfriend or something. You're like, I don't know, I'm dating someone else now. Do we have to talk about this?
But I still love you.
I still love you. I will
I
always
love
love you.
I just
So
haven't
yeah.
met the new guy yet. How much I
Mhm.
still love you.
So it's making it easier because I'm still really with her.
Yeah,
So that's kind of cool.
yeah. No, that's great. There's so much
Mhm.
to look forward to. I'm so excited. I There are no questions, which I actually feel is a really good thing because that means that I covered all the bases.
Covered it all.
Did a really good job.
I have a question for you. Who's next? Who's the next in the reading series? Can you remind
So
me?
Nora Dector, she is here. I think Nora, are you here? Are you
I
still
see her name. Yeah.
here? Yes. We did our undergrad together,
Mhm.
and I'm so excited to talk to her. She's got a YA book, which is so well written. It's one of those things. It's like Alicia, like reading stuff written by people that I did my undergrad with is like revisiting the most positive times in my York University experience. So I'm excited to sit with her and talk about her book. And then we've got Julia Zarankin, whose birding book is, I'm actually really excited to talk to her about it. I've recently got super into birds. There's
What else
birdhouses
do we
all
have?
over the backyard and bird feeders all over the backyard. I pulled out David's dad's binoculars and we're looking at all the birds. So I'm excited about that. And then we finished with Daryl J. McLeod. And
Very
then
cool.
that's the season. Yeah. And we're going to do a summer poetry thing. I don't know how I'm going to structure it yet, but I've decided to dive deep into poetry this summer and I'm going to talk to poets. So, Sophie, if you're still here, I'm going to talk to you
Cute.
about it.
I don't know if she's still here.
She was. I was just
There.
looking at her.
Yeah. Sophie, poets.
She was clearly texting with either Kate or Sherry because I could see both of them laughing coincidentally.
Uh-huh. I wanted to say something to David, which is that the whole time that I was talking, I thought that I was doing a really good job because I thought he was like smiling at me. And now I've just realized it's the headshot.
Headshot.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Let's go to confidence, David.
That's hilarious. And he doesn't have his sound on because he's actually just in the kitchen. So it's like
I thought the same thing. It was hilarious. It's like,
Listen.
why? Marissa's really entertaining him today.
He's not even blinking. Anyway, that's how I had to end it on an unprofessional note. So there we go. Poor Kaylee.
that she was looking at your picture the whole time and thinking that you were just super engaged the whole time.
Me too, by the way. I really thought it was him. I was like, did my screen froze?
So before, I don't want anyone to disappear as we dive deep into our, I miss you guys so much, but we have a raffle. Simon & Schuster has given me 2 copies of Lucky to raffle off, and they are going to mail them to you. If you have a copy, if you have read it already, feel free to nominate somebody else and send their name and mailing address to me, and I can get it to Simon & Schuster. So Kaylee, raffle away.
The first copy goes to Treva Thompson.
Oh, yay. That's my neighbor.
Yeah.
Also on Hyde Park Avenue, Kaylee. Kaylee's on
Nice.
Hyde Park Avenue as well.
The best street in the world.
Treva, are you still here? Yep, she gave us the thumbs up. Treva, you can send me your mailing address to junctionrights@gmail.com, and I will get that off to Juliana at Simon & Schuster. And one more copy.
All right. And the second copy goes to Sophie Chouinard.
Oh,
Hey, just what you need.
one.
Are you gonna sign this one, Marissa?
No, I'm going to sign it. I forgot to mention that I'm the copy that you get is
Yay!
actually signed by
2 of my favorite people in one book.
Right. That's it. I'm
Yeah.
so sad. I was very happy at one point in time. Sherry, Sophie, you all 3 of you are up at the top of my chat right now, which is very exciting. Everybody else, thank you so much for coming. This has been great. Marissa, great to talk to you about Lucky. I wish you all the best with this book. I'm so excited for everything that is going to come out for Lucky and for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Allie. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being such a champion of Canadian literature, and I appreciate it.
I try. I like this structure. This structure works for me because I actually get to read everybody's book before the reading, and I don't feel like I'm kind of flying at the seat of my pants trying to find questions that fit all 4 of the writers that are there. It's nice to be able to target questions and really dig deep into the work, into one specific work.
Yeah, I think I loved it. Your questions were great.
Good. Thank you. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank
See
you.
in a couple of weeks with Nora and everybody. Bye. Thanks, Kaylee.
Bye. Thank you.